Well, good afternoon everybody, it's Gavin here, Sarah's hubby. Now just a few minutes ago you may have seen the video I posted on the 13th of November in relation to the ketones. Now in the beginning of that I did make mention that at the end of it I was going to do another video. Well, that's this one. So I had been speaking with my son Max, and I suppose in a way it's dream building for me. I'm a child of the 70s, so I was born in the 60s, 69. I saw the last 28 days of 1969, so I don't remember too much of it, but I grew up in the 70s. Now, having grown up in the 70s, there were a lot of shows on TV, particularly Thunderbirds. That was the marionettes, puppets, and Virgil, and they're all on strings, and they look really, really funny. And they were always talking about new and better technology, going faster, going further. You have the spaceships that could go out. When they did the Sun Probe one, it was just fantastic. I grew up with the belief that it didn't matter what got in the way. We, as a peoples, the entire planet, could do amazing things. I grew up watching Star Trek. Boldly going where no man had gone before. They've recently just finished doing the rest of Captain Kirk's journey. It's a different actor, obviously, but they did a great job of that. So if you are watching this and you are a bit of a sci-fi fan, and Star Trek is part of that genre of sci-fi that you quite enjoy, go for gold. It's a corker. New actors in that really do a good job of portraying the attitudes and personas and the personalities of the originals. So the Doctor is very different looking. Dr. McCoy, he looks very different to the original, but by and by, he still does a great job of keeping old Captain Kirk under control. It's really, really good. Anyway, I digress. So I grew up in an era where everything was magical. The worst thing we had to worry about was actually getting up every day and going to school. I feel sorry for the kids of today because things are a lot harder for them in many regards. Alright, the world technically is an easier place. The information's at their fingers, but so are the responsibilities of having that sort of information, in that doxing, cyberbullying, the things that you and I, who are of the older generations, never had to put up with. These poor kids are now lumped with this horrifying concept of being picked on, just for being them, and it's horrific. And plus, we've got an epidemic, it would seem, of transgenderism. If you look at all these issues from my perspective, it all seems to go back to what they're absorbing mentally. So for a few years back in about, it seemed to be the 90s, you'd have people, it was almost cool to be gay. Whether guys were gay or not, they were encouraged to be gay, and that was a media push. Girls like the softer guy. No. Any guy out there who's married knows that your wife wants you to be a provider. She wants you to be a man, so you're also a protector. A man who falls apart at the drop of a hat because he's softer than the girl is of no value to the girl, so why would she want him as partner? Alright, there may be some girls out there who are very masculine in a lot of ways, and they may tolerate a feminine man to a point, but the divorce rates would indicate that that may be not the case, and that seems to be a worldwide thing. Now, that's exceedingly political, and that's going to be pushing a whole heap of red hot buttons for people, but I'm getting to something here. Now, the reason I say that everything is what they're bringing in mentally, We are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I don't think there's too many people out there who would doubt that. If you have any precept that there is a divine, then you would be saying, well, yeah. Even if you're an agnostic, you would agree, so you would believe it when you get there. Part of you actually believes that there's a possibility that there's a divine. If you're a complete and total atheist, there'll be some part of you that is probably thinking, gee whiz, I really hope there's a God and an afterlife, because otherwise, well, it's just blackness and nothing. Now, in another video I'll go through my personal experience of what happened to me when I was 21 and I hadn't been in the army for very long. It completely changed my life. But I'll leave that there. Now, my concern is that we've allowed the media, and I mean, by allow, people haven't challenged the media for many years. The media has been allowed to say and do things that we all knew, it's garbage. But they were never taken to task. And when they openly got things wrong, they never publicly apologised. And we've allowed this to go on. And our politicians share blame in this, because our politicians are in a position to actually keep the media honest. They create law. Now, you've got to have freedom of the press. I understand this. But with great freedoms come great responsibilities. Now, by rights, if people in a position of great power openly lie and they get away with it, that's corrupt. So our media has been allowed to be corrupted, and by default, because the media then become not only corrupt, but then they become aligned to a particular issue. So, and there's so many of them. You know, transgenderism, climate change, you know, global crises of some description. Notice how anything the media focuses on is only purely for the time frame that they can make money out of it. Now, in the last couple of months, or in the last month, who has heard anything about Ukraine? There's still men on both sides who, they don't want to be there. I can almost guarantee the Russians don't want to be there any more than the Ukrainians. But you've got the media beating stuff up. You've got two men, Vladimir Putin and that Zelensky guy. And I've got a few issues I have about him. They're the ones disagreeing. And all the other, and the men of their countries are dying in the trenches for it. It's a waste. It's a tragedy. Those men, all they wanted to do was to do their jobs, go to work, earn money, come home, pay the bills, watch their families grow, get old with their partners, and then be laid to rest at the end of it, knowing that they did the best they could for their families. Now what's happening? They're dying for a useless war. Who's getting all the benefit out of this? The arms manufacturers, the media, and politicians arguing endlessly about what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Give me a break. Good men on both sides are dying. Now, I've noticed this about the media, because we aren't even hearing anything about global warming now, or the global boiling. You know, since the 80s, I can remember, every 5 years the world was going to end. Never ended. And I've noticed that the weather that we're having now, particularly in Australia, is exceedingly similar to the weather that we were having in the 70s, because I grew up in that. So, you know, you get your cold spells. I think in the 70s we missed a couple of weeks of the westerly winds. They came late. It's what would happen in the eastern seaboard. They came late this year. First off, they were saying, oh, this summer we're not going to get a drop of rain. Well, look outside the truck and you can see it's cloudy down here. I drove through rain last week. I drove through rain last night. You're right. These experts, I think, need to go back to university and learn how to actually do their science properly. I was once taught, if you want to see what the weather's going to be like, watch the ants. When they go up, so does the water level. Well, around my place, the ants have been going up in their droves. Like, we've got nests of them going up. Can't let that go on. I'm going to have to, unfortunately, dispatch a few nests. But you watch animals, and you can see very clearly what's going on, and it's completely poles apart from what the media are telling us. So, this is, look, I'm getting somewhere with this, guys, so please bear with me, and I hope I'm not upsetting too many of you. And oh, look, I'll possibly get cancelled by YouTube anyway, so who cares? But we have completely, as a peoples, lost our collective minds. We're nuts. Now, if there is life in space, and me personally, I believe they're out there. Statistically, it's impossible that we're the only life in the universe. Like, come on. Are we that egocentric that we think we're it? Good grief, get a grip. So, statistically, there has to be at least one other group out there. And if they're more intelligent than us, why would they come down to a bunch of warmongering morons like us? They can see how hostilities just flare up. Countries go to war. You know, other people start putting their 5 cents worth into turn an anthill into a huge mountain range, an insurmountable obstacle that has to be destroyed with every weapon of war. And you see they're now posting videos on YouTube about how wonderful the aircraft are. You know, that the Americans have got versus what the Chinese have got, even though the Chinese have been copying what the Americans have. Who gives a rat's? Haven't enough people paid with their lives for all of this? Do we really need to keep going? So this brings me to what I want to discuss right from the get-go. We have technology at our disposal. Now, love him, hate him, I think he's an absolute dead-set legend. That's Elon Musk. He is a dead-set legend, and the crew that he's got working with him, and I say with him because, look, I'd love to work with him. I reckon he would, as a man who is an inspirational type of person, he would have to be one of the best. Now, I'm only talking in the fields of engineering here because I have a mind that I love engineering. I dare say Donald Trump would probably be an extremely good man to talk to about real estate. There are other men out there, who have been absolutely spectacular in their fields, mostly unsung. You know, they're quiet business people. They just go on with their lives, and yes, they become exceedingly wealthy because they're brilliant and they know how to get themselves started. They've spoken to the right people. They've got the chance, and they've run with it. I think good on them. Not all of us can do it. Not all of us are going to be in a position to do it. So I bear no ill will or sour grapes towards these people for doing what they're doing. I think go for it, guys. And there needs to be more of them. Now, could you imagine with the technology that we've got today and the world that we currently live in? We've had the Cold War between Russia and America, and to a point it's still going on. We've got all of these grown-ups, so-called, who are running countries who are so immature it's not funny. Like, they argue, bitch, squabble, carry on like absolute toddlers, and they get other people killed. That's why other species out there don't want to have anything to do with us, because they're probably, and I say by and large, they would be fairly peaceful. they wouldn't want us with our current concepts of conquest going out there in the big bad universe trying to be lords and masters over other beings. Like, it's not our role, it's not our right. However, if we could let ego be put to one side, get rid of ego actually would be an even better concept, but just say we got rid of ego and we said, right, Elon, you've got some pretty amazing kit now. You can take off and land the same spacecraft. We've got software and computers now that, like a huge amount of computing power can now be in quite a small thing. The dash on my truck is proof of that. Like, it's got a couple of tablets, and that has completely taken over from all the dials and switches that used to be in trucks. It's absolutely incredible, beautiful, clean. I love it. But my point is, technology has gotten to a point now where we've got a mobile phone that is more powerful than what went up in the space capsules during the 1960s. My mobile phone is more powerful than all the computers that were in those spaceships. So, you couple that with Elon's ships, you've now got a very potent concept. Now, one other thing I really think is fantastic about Elon is that he's opened up the patents to everybody. To me, that is the most magnanimous thing anybody could ever do. That means he's doing it for the right reasons. He is actually putting it out there so everybody can have a go. So, there's also a couple of guys who came up, I've seen the videos, they've got some amazing designs for the wheel type space stations. Now, if these guys got together with Elon, so Elon, if you ever see this, shout out to you. I think you're a dead set legend. But if you could work with some of these other guys, got great ideas, and you've all worked on how you can get some of these modules, maybe built on Earth, shipped up into orbit. And 2 or 3 of these space stations were built. Now, they'll be on our side of the Van Allen belts, but obviously the solar radiations and whatever else is out there is a very hostile environment. So once you've got scientists living up there, and perhaps even with their families, that's how big these things would be. We're solving all the problems by being close. And we're building space stations, big, solid, sturdy space stations. And then getting the likes of Donald Trump or any other very, very experienced real estate people who know how to build buildings. They'll know all of the infrastructure that's going to be required to keep people comfortable, such as all the different things in plumbing and all the rest of it. And working with scientists and engineers and these people, you can then build up a really, really comfortable, habitable space up in space. Yeah, sorry. The wording didn't sound quite right, I suppose, space and space. But anyway, we start working on something like that. And really, by that stage, once we've started doing all of this, global hostilities should become a thing of the past. In that all nations basically say to hostile nations, pull your head in. If you pull your head in and you stop your garbage, then everybody can start to enjoy this. So every country has the option to now, if you had all of this startup, just say Elon and these other guys got together and said, right, okay, we'll find a spot that we can do this, and that country would make it, facilitate this so that there was launch areas, so you can have multiple launches, cut all the red tape, get it so that these things can get up there. They get them up there, they start setting them up, and you might have 3 or 4 of them. And at the same time, they can then start working on the problem that we've got with all the debris that's around the planet. Now, that's a huge resource. That's metal. Now, I don't know if anybody here scraps metal. I do. I actually have a small home foundry, and I melt it down, cast it into ingots. There are other things I'm looking to do with it with my son, but we're getting a huge stockpile of ingots from old electric motors and other bits and pieces, old bull bars, old bits of trim. We're melting it all down, and we've got ingots. Now, the ingots take up a lot less space than all the rubbish that they came from. Now, if you think about it, you start collecting all that space debris. Now, yeah, granted, some of it's moving at extremely high velocity. So, depending on the direction it's going in, you'd need vehicles of some description that would have to be designed that could capture this material. And then, once it's all being captured, and however that would have to be done, like maybe electromagnetics if it's, of the right thing, or I know that other metals, being non-ferrous, you can use other processes, like a static electricity in some cases can attract them. But at any rate, capturing the metals, right, and then compressing it. Now, initially we could maybe send it back to Earth in one of Elon's ships as it's coming back, or we could set up other ships that would eventually, just like the JWS here, the Webb telescope that they got out there. It's got heat shields and light shields. Now, if you could set it up so that you had the heat shields and they were radiation proof and all the rest of it, you got a hot spot. Now, space is very, very cold. We know this. So, on one side of the shield, it's going to be blisteringly hot. And obviously, the closer you get to the sun, the hotter that could potentially become because of radiation. So, if you've got a means to heat something, you can then melt the metals. And then you extrude the metal or pour it, however you're going to do it, in zero gravity. That would become another interesting project for Elon or his crew, his engineers. And then on the other side, it's literally going into an extremely cold environment. So, you could then make materials of some description out there in space. So they could be flat, you can literally roll it, and it's white hot when it's coming out of the roller, and then instantly it's going into minus 200 plus degrees Celsius on the other side. So it's going to be cooling very, very quickly. Now, there may have to be a means of cooling it more slowly so you don't get the crystals making it too brittle. But at any rate, there's a means. So they start cleaning up the area around our planet. Then they're building these spaceships, and what they're working on then is all the other things that would go with, well, how do you make it more comfortable in space? So they're producing, for want of a better term, an Argo ship. So that they can actually have plants growing in there, so that for food, and then eventually animals, like chooks maybe, just so that you can have eggs. May have a couple of cows up there, and you're starting up your dairy type industry. So there may be one ship dedicated to food. Why not? And then over time, they get things right. They might then say, well, we've got 6 or 7 of these ships, we've gotten better shielding against the radiation. They could send 3 or 4 of those ships to the moon, and it could orbit the moon. So you don't actually have to build on the moon and go through all the problems of trying to get a settlement on the moon, where you may have, there may be something on the moon that we don't know about that could be a bacterium. That once you disturb it in the deeper regolith, it could be a problem. It may turn everybody retarded. I don't know, whatever it would do. But you've got the opportunity to study from a position of safety around the planet or the moon. They can then do the same thing for Mars. Now, what if it took 2 years to get out there? Does it matter? Those people would go with their families. So you have men and women, a couple of kids, and they go out. Now you're going to have different people, you're going to have different scientists, astronomers, computer technicians, all that sort of good stuff. They take enough equipment with them to repair their ships, maybe 5 or 6 times for the computers, and have equipment that they can actually make components with for, say, the propulsion systems or whatever it is that they need to do. And they'd have a pretty good idea after doing it for 5 or 10 years around our planet as to what sort of things can go wrong over time. So over time we're starting to get better. Now during that time, whilst they're working on those, well, enterprising people could start thinking of new and more interesting ways of racing. Now we have car racing, and that improved engines in cars, handling, all that sort of good stuff here on Earth. We've had ship races, sailing boats, and some of the technology. Look at Australia too. Look at some of the other ships that have been, the sailing yachts that have been created. Compared to what they were like in the 1700s to today, chalk and cheese. What a yacht can do today is incredible. Then you can think of, well, okay, you think back when the Wright brothers first flew the Kitty Hawk to what planes can do today. You go, good grief. And a lot of the technology was born just before the Second World War, when they were having the air races. Through racing, you improve, you get better, and it's the spirit of competition, not of war. So if we had the means to get them up there, people discover that, oh yeah, okay, well let's build something that we can go around the moon with. So from Earth, around the moon and back. Pretty much what they did in 1969, but it's now a little bit more organised to be a race. Now, yes, the chances of people dying in the early days are extremely high. They used to die all the time in the early motor races. They died all the time in the air races. They died all the time in the ship and yacht races. Hell, people are dying every day during war. So all the moral stuff can go to that side. I'm talking about, how do you make the human race come together? What better way to get everybody working together? I don't care what colour, religion, sexual orientation you are, none of that matters. What people all seem to have is curiosity and a sense of adventure. There's very, very few people on the planet who don't have curiosity about something, and even fewer people who don't want to understand and learn and actually try to do something that would be really, really cool. Now, initially, these craft would possibly take weeks to get into orbit, get all organised, and NASA would set up the programs in basically a mobile phone to tell them what direction or what star they got to aim at and go around the moon, and how long it's going to take, and the angle they got to be on. All of that would be sorted out. The three-dimensional mathematical models that they'd produce, they'd be able to get that sorted. I'm pretty sure NASA has that skill. They've done it a few times. I'm sure they could do it again. Now, if you've got that capability and you've got people building these ships, now initially it'll only be one or two, and you have the likes of Russia, China, Australia, hopefully, and a few other countries doing this, and you possibly even end up with someone like Elon Musk or somebody else. Richard Branson, we haven't heard from him for a while. He was building his ships aircraft to go on the edge of space or go into space or low orbit, and then come back. Gee, with some of these guys fly around these corners, and you can imagine you got the likes of these guys being pioneers, and then they're setting up races. Now initially, it could take a week, say, to get around the moon and back. Over the years, that's going to get quicker, to the point where one day they'll be probably going from Earth to the moon and back. And to make it harder, they might say, oh right, well it's going to go around the Earth and moon 2 or 3 times in a 24-hour period. Who knows? And that's the thing. Like, if we start, things will improve. They did with every other sort of racing. And my personal belief is, when they were doing something like this, they said, right, the end of the race, everything about the craft that were in the race is open to everybody on the planet. Every single aspect of it. The design, materials, the computer software that went into making it, the computer software that ran it, the engines, you name it, everything is there. The reason I say that is a lot more people get it and they go, ooh, I could do that. And even some of the smaller countries, and will have their people going, we could have a go at this. And so they're all doing it. And even if Elon, I don't know how much all of this would cost. I'd like to think that in time, because we're all just having fun, instead of killing each other, we'd start saying, well, it's not going to cost anything. Like, we just do it. And before you know it, this becomes a regular thing. Yes, people gamble on it. So what? They gamble on horse races. In Australia, they'll gamble on a flaming cockroach race. Cockroaches run along the ground. Oh, that's mine. Yeah, I won. Everybody hands out cash. It's people will bet on flies crawling up a wall. So, yes, gambling will happen with this too. That just adds another aspect to it. It helps with the development. At the end of the day, when people gamble on something, they're putting their faith in something, we're seeing people striving. And before you know it, you're going to have these craft that are going faster and faster, and they can go out there and they're safer, they're getting better. Then they can start saying, well, let's do something really interesting. Okay, maybe every year we'll do a Venus run, out to Venus, maybe circle Venus a couple of times and come back. They can have satellites stationed around Venus, or there might even be one of the space stations out at Venus doing studies on the planet. And yet they're out there, people have already gone there to witness the race at Venus. We've got the same thing going on with the race out to Mars. All these things could occur, and not one person actually has to step foot on those planets, because you've got a really good, safe environment in the space station that's circling these planets. And the thing is, you're going to probably have people from all over the world working on these different space stations, doing their particular things. Like you'll have engineers from all over the world serving on this one, and then they go, oh look, I'd like to go work on the Mars one. They go out to the Mars stations or the Moon stations. There may be somebody out at Phobos, or maybe even going out to Triton, because they've got a station circling Triton, and they can go out there and they see what's going on there and in real time. And the thing is, they don't actually have to step foot on there initially, but they want to see if, instead of living on Mars, where they know there's Mars quakes that can be quite devastating, they can then take a certain amount of, they can land down there, take certain samples, clean up the garbage that's already been left there with the rovers, clean all that up. We've got to leave a clean footprint everywhere we go from here on. Take all that material back, clean it up, and they recycle what they can, and then they take up some of the soil and they see if plants will grow in it. Now, they'd obviously have to have certain protocols just in case there is something on Mars that is a little bit nastier than we realise, because it's not going to affect the rovers, but we're biological, so it will possibly affect us. So they do tests on it. They say, right, can they see if there's anything in it? What does the soil do in our nitrogen-rich environment? Nothing? Sweet. Then they put plants in it. Plants don't grow. Okay. Now, because of the farming that they do on the spaceships for their own food supplies, they've got animal dung. Put the animal dung in there. Mix that up, put the plants in it. Does it support it plant life? Yes, no. Oh, the plants have done something interesting. Why? And then they can analyse the soils again to see if there's some sort of reaction between that regolith and manure, or the oxygen and nitrogen mix. Who knows? We're talking about a planet that's not our own. So they'll do all the experimentation and all that sort of stuff without actually putting people on the place where they're marooned, basically. They're on a space station. And if it all goes to garbage and they can't land there ever for some reason or whatever, they can just turn the thing around and come back. So what if it took 10 years? It's like a 10-year cruise around the world, isn't it? But you're cruising in space. The opportunities that are existing are absolutely incredible, and I believe we're at the point now as a planetary society that if we stop the garbage of killing each other, you know, basically wholesale slaughter, all cheered on by the media. The media just love a good war. You see the reporters there, all excited, oh yeah, this is going on. But some poor bugger over there isn't going home to their family anymore whilst they're cheering it on. You know, how about instead of cheering on the worst of our peoples, we start looking to work together. Now, there's always going to be groups who go, no, I'm not going to do that, you know, I'd rather do whatever it is that they do. Okay. And like the British they had a thing of, I'm going to send you to Coventry, which is basically, you're pushed to one side, no one's going to talk to you. Now, just say you had a belligerent state. I don't know, maybe there's an island state in the middle of the Indian Ocean, say, a hypothetical island state that is exceedingly belligerent, and all they want to do is wage war, right? They go out of their way to kill anybody and everybody. Okay. We don't trade with them. We don't communicate with them, except for once a year we send a message, right, we're doing this now, would you like to become part of it? If you're going to become part of it, you've got to cut the garbage and become a citizen of the world. You know, we're all here working together. Eventually the people of that country will say to their leader, oh, come on, you know, we're missing out on opportunities here, you know, we want to do this too. Now, you got little tin pot dictators like Kim Jong-un. He's destroying his people. Look at them, poor buggers. Could you imagine how wonderful it would be if the world got together? So you had the American president and the Russian president and Xi Jinping all sit down, the three of them, and say, right, okay, we're the three biggest countries on the planet. It's up to us. Right, I think it's time for us to bury the hatchet. Let's go to space. Let's work together. Our countries' flags stay on our countries, and they could come up with a brand spanking new symbol to represent United Earth. That's what goes into space. Because with national pride comes ego. Now, I am an extremely proud Aussie. I love this country. I signed the blank check that even though I've retired from the military, it's still there. So I'm still prepared to do what I need to do if it's called upon, but I prefer it not be called upon. I'd rather be saying to everybody, hey, let's all just go have some fun up there. Like, I could just imagine, instead of driving a truck down here on planet Earth, driving some sort of space vehicle up there, you know, carting freight around. That would float my boat mercilessly. That would just be fantastic. You know, I love doing engineering as well. So even if I was allowed to work on something, you know, even, you know, turning, you know, parts out of steel or something like that with a lathe, I'd stand there all day long, you know, doing something like that just to have the chance to do it, you know, to be with that many other people doing something spectacular. Like, and for us in this time frame at the beginning of the 21st century, it would be amazing. But if we do it now, in another 100 years, imagine what our grandkids will be doing. Like, just imagine. Wouldn't it be amazing? But it's going to take our world leaders growing up. Now, I know that they've all got their responsibilities, and the leaders of each nation, they claim that they're doing what their people want. When was the last time our politicians ever actually listened to us? Joe Biden has only got about 30% approval rating in his country. I don't know what Vlad's got. I don't know what Xi Jinping's got. I couldn't imagine that if you took Kim Jong-un Kim Jong-il out of the picture altogether, would the North Koreans say, "Oh yes, we love him"? If he wasn't there, and there was no fear of them being shot or their families being shot or anything else, would they all say, "Oh yeah, bring back Kim, we love him"? Really? The way he treats his people, and he gives himself a palace to live in? And many of our politicians are that way. They're very, very self-centered peoples. They go into government broke and they come out multi-millionaires. How does that work? Now, once we've got something in space and we're starting to work as a global community, and we start maturing as a global peoples, I'm not talking about us having any arms on those ships at all. No arms. I personally believe if you're in space, it's for pure exploration, and if there's any form of weaponry, it is purely designed to be for a scientific purpose, such as there's an asteroid there, we want to see what's in it, and you may have something that you can crack that like a big egg to see what's in it. Now that would come much later, once they've got certain technologies that can maybe stop that thing from disintegrating and going all over the place and becoming a real danger to everything and everyone. But I don't believe if we go into space we should be hostile in any way, shape or form. We've been around on this planet, I dare say, for a lot longer than is believed. So I'm of the opinion that perhaps, just perhaps, we've been visited many, many times. The evidence is there to show that we've been visited, and they're just waiting for us up there. Because if they were hostile, if the whole intent was hostility, we would have been eradicated like vermin centuries ago, when we were a hell of a lot weaker than we are now. I think they're just waiting for us to grow up and mature. And the fact that they've been patient enough to not eradicate us means that they think that we have potential. So, if the likes of Elon and a few of the other guys could get together and actually help us transition from being a warmongering bunch of morons to spacefaring people who are just curious again. We're excited about what the possibilities are. Like the opportunities that exist are just going to be endless. Yes, a lot of people will die in the early days of exploration. A lot of people are dying now, and we haven't left the planet, and they're dying needlessly, like seeing men, women and children killed. That's not progress. We're regressing, and we're becoming more and more barbaric. And because we're encouraged to cheer on, "Oh, go this mob, you're more right than everybody else." They very well may be, but at the end of the day, we're cheering on people losing their lives. Now, my own personal beliefs in the current war that's happening in the Middle East, look, I have my beliefs, and I'll be quite open, honest. At the end of the day, it is Israel. It always has been. Israel. It's been in the Bible for centuries, thousands of years actually. There's history there that proves that they've been there for thousands of years. And it was called Judea long before the Romans changed the name to Palestinia. And then, now people say, oh, it's Palestine, I'm a Palestinian. Well, actually, technically, if that were the case, then the original occupants of Palestinia, who were the Judeans, who were the Jews, are actually the Palestinians, if we're going to go down that road. So, yeah. Look, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to get people aligning just because of that aspect. I want us to start looking at the possibility of what can our countries do instead of brassing each other up. What can we do to actually give us all something to aspire to? Imagine, what could your grandkids be doing in 100 years if we're out there instead of here? Whilst we're here and we've got nothing to sort of unite us, all we're going to do is fight. Like, you imagine, those of you who've got siblings, I've got 4 of them. If you were locked in the same room with one lot of toys, what happened? Before long, there was a punch-up. You'd get into it with your siblings because they had something that you wanted at that moment. They didn't want to give it up, and you were going to take it off them. And before you know it, it was on. If we use that analogy, that we're all just a bunch of very, very immature children, it actually helps us to understand the human problem at the moment. We're stuck in a room. We're stuck on a little pebble in the middle of abject nowhere, and because we've explored all the dry stuff quite fully now, there's a fair bit of wet stuff we haven't explored, but for centuries we've always looked up. What's out there? That's where we need to go. Yes, people will still look at the wet stuff, and they'll find some amazing stuff in the wet stuff. I fully expect that's going to occur. But could you imagine if we go out there and we work together as one huge collective team, explore? People who get that opportunity, they're not going to be focused on, oh, your skin's a different melanin shade to mine. Nobody's going to give a flying rat's ass about that. You're up there. You're doing something really spectacular. Something that 100 years ago, they only could dream of something like that. Early movies had people fired out of a gun hitting the moon, in a giant bullet, and somehow surviving. Like everybody who's ever been in the artillery knows that setback would have turned them to mush. But still, it's a story. Imagine the stories that will come out from us going into space. Imagine Hollywood will actually have some new material that they won't have to destroy with wokeism. Wouldn't that be a pleasurable change? Anyway, I think I've been sort of skirting around the political stuff enough, and I don't want to get political. I really honestly believe our future lies in space, and if we don't hurry up and start the move to get out there, we'll end up destroying ourselves. People are antsy. People are looking for a new challenge. War is not it. We've been fighting for millennia. Every civilization had its wars. Look at the ancient Egyptians had wars. Even the ancient Jews had wars. They've been, chopping each other to bits for millennia, right through to World War One, World War Two, Korea, Vietnam, all over the place. Iraq 1, Iraq 2. Like, if you look at how many people, and I actually looked this up, if you look at how many people have died and the amount of money that's been spent on it, it's a crime. If you look at how many people have died since World War One, in all wars, the numbers are horrific. And they're not just soldiers, they're civilians. So I think it's time we grew up as a peoples. If you guys agree with me and you think it's worthwhile, let's chat about it, and let's work out what we can do and who we have to contact and how we should contact them to actually get the ball rolling. If anybody out there knows Elon or has a means to contact him, maybe let's get together as a group and inspire him. He's one of the few, I think, who's got the forethought and the brains to actually make something like this come off. I reckon he could pull it off. I don't care about whose name's on the idea. If any of you guys want to run with the idea as your own, by all means go for it. None of that matters to me. I just look at the future and think of what I'd like for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and those who come, centuries later. I'd like to think that, those of us taking a stand now to say, look, enough of the garbage, we could make a big enough difference to make their lives something so spectacular. They would actually thank us. They'd be going, gee whiz, our great-great-grandparents, they really did a good thing by us. Well, they'll take it for granted. It doesn't really matter. None of us will be around to whinge about it, but and that's ego coming out, I suppose. But to just stop the war, we just don't need it. And people say we're overpopulated. Maybe we don't have enough people. Because you imagine we're mining asteroids, we don't have to mine here. We'll be finding new and more interesting fuel supplies. New ideas will come out about propulsion. And they can test them in real time up there. Not test them on a computer and then see if they can get it to launch and then remote control it. They'll be up there. They'll fly the components up and they'll be saying, oh look, it works differently to what we thought. And things will start to improve and things will just become so much more focused on a better future. And we'll forget all of this ego stuff. So a new global flag, not that UN flag, that piece of rag is being corrupted. A new flag for the planet. Let those of us on Earth rise as a people. There's very little genetic difference between each and every one of us. It's about time we took advantage of that and just said to our politicians, enough, no more. The military-industrial complex, instead of creating bullets and bombs, why don't you help put all your resources into, say, maybe doing the space racing? Skunk Works in America, you guys do some amazing work making weapons of war. How about making a brand spanking new design for your spaceship? There's inspiration in science fiction movies. The recent Battlestar Galactica has got it. They show how they maneuver the things. Have a look at that. Anyway, I think I've laboured the point enough. It's been nearly an hour. So I would really, really enjoy some feedback as to what you guys think we should do from here, who we should contact. Or even if you think it's even a worthwhile course, or do you think we're just too far gone? Okay guys, I'll leave it in your capable hands. See what you think, see what we can do. Peace.